Hey, what's up guys? Today is Tuesday, July 7th. It's just after 4 p.m. and the temperature is 33 degrees Celsius. I'm currently walking north on Yonge Street in North York. And I'm approaching Sheppard Avenue. So the plan for this walk is to walk north through the area known as Willowdale, or often referred to as Uptown Toronto, through the North York Centre, up to Finch Avenue. Where I started was just in front of the south entrance to Sheppard Station, which is the fourth busiest station on Toronto's subway network. And it's served by Line 1, which runs north to south up Yonge Street, as well as Line 4, which was built in 2002 and only has 5 stations on it. This is Sheppard Avenue here. That's a look to the east, where Line 4 runs. And that's a look to the west. If you keep going in that direction, you will get to Sheppard West Station, which was formerly known as Downsview Station. Like a lot of areas in the city, this area in particular has exploded with development in recent years. And that I'm looking at to the right is the young Sheppard Centre. You can access the subway from there. There's more entrances to the subway straight ahead, and what looks to be a Taco Bell I haven't seen before. The Sheppard Centre's had a makeover in recent years. There used to be a Cineplex Odeon theater in it. But Cineplex took over the theater just to the north of here at the North York Centre in a building known as Empress Walk. So they decided to shutter the cinema here and relocate to that one. That was formerly a famous Players theater known as Silver City. This area is well known for its Asian restaurants. A lot of people often refer to it as Toronto's second Koreatown, with the traditional Koreatown being just west of downtown in the Christie and Bloor area. One of my favorite restaurants used to be on this block. It was called June's, and they served a dish called duck galbi, but they're no longer around. If you haven't had the chance to try Korean-style fried chicken, I definitely recommend this place, The Fry. It's a chain. There's locations all over the city. So this stretch of Yonge Street we're walking will span 3 subway stations from Sheppard. And then just up ahead is the North York Centre Station. And then when we get to Finch, there will be Finch Station. Line 4, which runs off of Sheppard Station and only features 5 stations, was originally intended to go all the way to McCowan Road in Scarborough. I believe through the Scarborough Town Centre, which is a large shopping mall. But instead we ended up with a truncated version. So if you look at a map of the city's subway network, it almost looks like a little stump of just 5 stations sticking out. And there's been numerous ideas floated as to how to complete it. One that seemed to gain a lot of traction was the idea of filling in the uncompleted portion of the line with a surface level LRT. But the last I heard was the provincial government had promised funding to complete it as a subway and build a tunnel and run that out to McCowan Road, which in theory should spur more development along that section of Sheppard. Certainly make it more convenient to get around. But if you're familiar with the Toronto subway system, I don't think we should be seeing any more subway development until they build the relief line, which is morphed into what the province calls the Ontario line. But with such a strong and sudden shift to office employees working from home, it remains to be seen if the same kind of demand for the subway network downtown will still persist. I would also expect us to be a lot smarter in terms of staggering start times at work to reduce the effects of rush hour. Perhaps having people come in as early as 6 or 7 if they choose, and coming in as late as 11 or 12, thus spreading out the workday. Another popular idea that's been gaining some traction is the idea of a 4-day work week. I should be working right now, but I took the day off. So up until 1998, North York used to be its own city. And this was the center of it, or its downtown, so to speak. But that was when Toronto amalgamated its 5 boroughs into one megacity. And the mayor of North York at the time, Mel Lastman, became the first ever mayor of the Toronto megacity. And he replaced Barbara Hall as Toronto's mayor. And just up ahead was the old North York City Hall, which we'll be passing by in a second. I don't remember the keg being located there. I thought it was... I might be incorrect on that, but it looks like they've moved into some new digs. This here on our left is North York Boulevard. And in behind that Meridian Arts Center, you'll find the North York Cemetery where Tim Horton was buried. It's a very well-known name in Canada for the coffee and donut shop. So there's a look at the Arts Center. That was built back in 1993, and I don't think it was too successful. They ended up reducing it from a 3-theater cinema to 2. and it's changed ownership a few times. As this was the former center of the city known as North York, there are a lot of government buildings in this area. There's the Toronto District School Board. You'll notice a lot of high-rises on this stretch of Yonge Street in North York. But what's kind of unique to this area is they don't really stretch to the east or west. It's all north to south. In other major nodes such as Yonge and Eglinton, you'll find high-rises that expand eastward and westward, but in this neighborhood, they're all on Yonge Street pretty much. Just a few blocks east or west in either direction, and you find yourself smack in the middle of the suburbs. So this is Mel Lastman Square, named after the former mayor of North York and the city of Toronto. It's nice and cool under here. There is a stage area straight ahead. In the background there, that's the North York Civic Center itself, formerly the City Hall of North York. That was built back in the 70s. And just down there, every winter becomes a public skating rink. That building straight ahead is Empress Walk. Find a movie theater in there, a Loblaws supermarket, an LCBO liquor store. There's a Best Buy, which was formerly a Future Shop, a Dollarama, and one of the few Wendy's locations you'll find in the city of Toronto. I only know of two that are downtown, and all the other ones I know are up here at North York. Seems to be some kind of incident happening down here. I think he might have just assaulted that man. And he's taken his troubles into Starbucks. So this is where the North York Center Station is. You can enter it from either side of the street. That's the movie theater that used to be known as Silver City. Certainly quite convenient if you live there. You have a supermarket and several places to shop, as well as a subway, all without having to step outside. I think it'll be more interesting if we cross here. There's not a whole lot on the west side of Yonge Street for a while. I don't know if you can hear that guy, but he's talking pretty damn loud to his phone. Never understood why people do that. You don't really need to raise your voice when you're speaking on a cell phone, but some people will never learn. There's Kintan Ramen, which is a chain that's sprung up all over the city. It's quite good. Maximum of 2 guests at any time allowed. There's certainly a lot of Chinese, Korean, Japanese, and Taiwanese style restaurants in this area. In fact, over half of the population that lives in this Willowdale neighborhood are immigrants, and the 2 biggest groups are Chinese and Korean. There's also a fairly large Iranian population here. When there was that quote-unquote mysterious plane crash earlier in the year, or it might have been at the end of last year. I'm not quite remembering exactly when it was, but there was a large memorial for it at the North York Center. One of the biggest drawbacks of this neighborhood is how wide Yonge Street is. It doesn't really have a neighborhood feel or vibe to it with such a wide street running through the middle of it. The idea was floated to take out a lane of traffic on both sides and make the area more pedestrian friendly, but City Council shot that down, unfortunately. The zoning in this area is such that as buildings are located closer to the subway stations, they're not allowed to provide as much parking, which in turn promotes more public transit use. Outside of downtown Toronto, this is the largest employment center in the city of Toronto. Which makes sense given its close proximity to highways, as just south of Sheppard, where I started, is Highway 401, which is the busiest freeway in actually all of North America. It's 16 lanes wide in a lot of sections, so that gives great access to this area for people from all over and around the Greater Toronto Area. And north of Toronto is Highway 407, and by north of Toronto I mean north of Steeles Avenue, where the city of Toronto ends and the next municipality begins. Hey Noodles, Chongqing street food. That's a new spot. Owl of Minerva over there is a well-known Korean restaurant. We have the Owl's Meat Shop just next to it. I'm not sure this is the kind of day I want to sit out in the patio and eat some really hot wings like those people were doing back there. This is Church Avenue. Presumably named after the Willowdale United Church, which is on the northwest corner over there. There's a Metro supermarket and a much smaller H-Mart, which is a small Korean-style market, which you're starting to see more and more all over the city pop up. There's a guy wearing his mask under his nose, riding his bike on the sidewalk. Someone should probably tell him he's doing everything wrong. I really don't see the need to wear a mask when I'm riding my bike. It's understandable if allergens or dust are your concern, but I think you're probably more likely to get struck by lightning and catch a virus riding your bike. Back in 2018, starting at Finch Avenue, just to the north of here, and heading down to Sheppard Street, or Sheppard Avenue, and the other side of the road was where the Toronto van attack happened. So someone who had rented a van went on a rampage down Yonge Street, mowing down pedestrians on his way, killing 10 pedestrians and severely injuring 16, I think was the damage. So that was certainly really big news in the city at the time, and pretty sad news. In the grand scheme of things, we're quite fortunate in Toronto that we don't have that type of event happen nearly as often as some cities down south seem to suffer them. I'm not really a fan of this cookie cutter condo style retail where there's very little room for the shops to have their own kind of personality. They're all conformed into these little predefined concrete blocks. That's one trend we've seen developers get away from in recent years. There seems to be quite a bit of retail in these ground units, so that's always a good thing for the neighborhood. A lot of smaller, independently run shops. This is the first day that it's mandatory to wear masks indoors anywhere that's publicly accessible in the city. And it's been mandatory to get off the sidewalk on your bike, buddy. That should not be tolerated. So it's been mandatory since July 2nd to wear your mask on the subway. I'd say about 80-85% of the people are complying. And today I've noticed that there's been employees handing out masks on the subway. And I saw some people who weren't wearing a mask still refuse them. And there seem to be no repercussions of that, which is a bit unfortunate. I think you should not be allowed to ride if you're going to refuse it. If you do have a medical issue, then why not just wear a visor? It's not going to impede your breathing. And at least it offers some level of protection to yourself and other people. It just seems rather selfish not to follow a public health order. Outside is a different story. So here's one of the older retail stretches on the street that hasn't been replaced by condos. This Korean restaurant here with the green sign, Sundubu Dolsat Bap, or Bukchongdong Soon Tofu, is one of the most popular Korean restaurants in the city, well known for its pork bone soup. They do have a location located in Koreatown. The streets are certainly less busy than they would normally be, but it is only 4:30. In about an hour or so, typically in the later half of rush hour, this area really starts to fill up on the streets as people are coming and going from work. It's certainly a convenient area to live. Downtown's only about 25-30 minutes away by subway. And those two tall pinkish buildings on the northwest corner of Yonge and Finch are known as the North American Center. They were some of the tallest high-rises built on this corridor, or some of the first that have since been joined by numerous others. I worked in those buildings for a year back in 2007, so I made a daily commute, ironically, from Koreatown, where I lived near Bloor and Christie, all the way up here every day. So I took line 2 over to Yonge Station and transferred north. For this part of the walk, I wish I was over on the other side of the street because there's some interesting retail over there. But it's such a wide, unpedestrian-friendly stretch of Yonge Street, it's not worth the jaywalk. And this is Finch Avenue we're approaching. You can enter Finch Station on the north side of Finch Avenue. There's about 6 different entrances on both sides of the street. There's a large bus bay there, so if you're going north of Finch, you could take the 60 bus, which will run up to Steeles Avenue. You'll also find a Viva and Go bus terminal just north of Finch Station. So from there, you can connect to outside of this region. There's a look at the Finch bus terminal over there. west here, straight ahead, eventually, I think at Yonge Street, you'll find Finch West subway station, which is one of the newest additions to the subway line, part of the York University extension. Finch itself is a relatively boring street. It's not particularly friendly to cyclists. So there's really not much reason to show much of it on this channel. I've recorded a bike ride that started at Jane and Finch, which is one of the more well-known intersections in Toronto, probably for all the wrong reasons. And it's really not that bad, but I rode from there down Finch Avenue to Yonge Street, and then I headed south down to York Mills. So we are now north of Finch Avenue. I recorded a video around Finch Station last week, so this area might look a little familiar to you. When I worked in that building right there, I tended to come across the street and frequent a lot of these places that have since changed names. There used to be a John Anderson's Diner straight ahead. Although an ice cold beer does look pretty good about now. I think I have something to do when I get back to the apartment. I can find some shade on the balcony. So the next major street to the north of here, well off into the distance, is Steeles Avenue. That's the northern border of the city of Toronto. So you do have to pay an extra fare if you take the transit north of there. Whether you're on the Toronto Transit Commission bus that heads that way, or if you board the Viva bus. You can't transfer from the TTC to Viva, so you have to pay two fares. It's really stupid planning by the various levels of government. It really should be integrated like it is in a lot of parts of the world. There are a couple of large surface parking lots on either side of Yonge Street here. And this hydro corridor has a pretty nice bike path that runs down it, or a recreational trail, so you can take that across the city over to the Jane and Finch area. There's a park and ride over at that parking lot exit. And I would have continued north up to Steeles, but I think I'll save that for another day. And I'm planning a bike ride pretty soon that starts at Steeles and goes all the way across Toronto down to the lake. There used to be a plaza just straight ahead there that had a bowlerama in it, one of the few remaining full-size bowling alleys in the city. But that has since been torn down for condos, so there's a whole lot of construction as you work your way up to Steeles. So I'll head into the subway station now. This is a look at the Viva bus terminal where you can take a bus out to York Region. I'm just going to put the camera down so I can put on my mask. There we go. I'm nice and compliant. enter through here and find my way down to the, I was going to say southbound subway platform, but they're both southbound, as this is the terminal station. Looks like my camera's, there we go. This is a part of the station I didn't show in my video of Finch Station, so I'll just leave the camera running until I get down to the platform. I am recording this with a new external microphone, so if you notice the audio is a little different, that would be why. Let me know in the comments if you think this sounds better, or if you can't tell a difference. I hope it sounds better. It was relatively expensive. So everyone you see should be wearing a mask or face covering. But we've seen several people who aren't already, which is rather disappointing. Public washrooms. It's probably a good idea to not use them unless you absolutely have to these days. And this is the terminal station, so all the trains go south. So I'll just get on this one right here. Typically, right when you see a train pull into the adjacent platform, that means this train is soon going to take off. That right there is the line 4 with only 5 stations on it, which I talked about earlier. Maybe it's not in focus. It terminates at Don Mills, and it starts at Sheppard Yonge, which is where I started. Not a whole lot of people getting off that train. So I'm going to end the video right now. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you on the next one.